Bonjour, everyone. Hi, this is Neshi Lokotz. Welcome to the Mystery School. Tonight is Thursday, November 29th. Can you believe that? We're at the very end of November already. You know, and I know that the months go by really fast, but this one was like, I didn't even blink. And we're at the end of it. So anyway, tonight is a really special night here on the Mystery School live stream. We have, and I've been anticipating this all day, really, is that we have St. Nicholas with us tonight. Can you believe it? I just love it when we hear the story, the real story of St. Nicholas, and that's what's going to happen tonight. And we also have, of course, the co-hosts here, Ortrun and Carl Franklin. But before we bring them on, I wanted to ask you guys to do me a favor. If you guys could please like and share the show. And I want to do this a little early because for those people who really want to hear the real story of St. Nicholas, we want to make sure we give them enough time to come and join us, right? So if you wouldn't mind liking and sharing the show, we'll get that done. And I'm going to do the same thing in just a second. I do have George with me tonight, and I'm going to try to keep him as quiet as I possibly can. We may have to go out and put him in the car at some point, but yeah. Just in case you guys hear some background noise, okay? All right. So here we go. We're going to bring on. There we go. Hi, Ortrun. Hi, Carl.
Hi, Neshi. Hi, everybody.
Good to be with everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you too. And this is the truth. I've been waiting for this all day because I love hearing about St. Nicholas and the true story of St. Nicholas. We have Rob Kendall in the house, and he says, interesting that St. Nicholas was a Greek saint given the Eastern Church emphasis on Easter over Christmas. Well, that certainly is part of it, isn't it?
Yes. Good point, Rob.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off and do the sharing so as many people as we can possibly let know about the show, okay? And if I'm going to turn it over to the two of you, and if you could please help our audience introduce what we're going to be talking about tonight, that would be great. Okay. There you go.
You're on.
Okay. Well, it's really wonderful to be here. And St. Nicholas is someone that is very, very close to my heart. And it's because of my experiences as a child in Europe, in Austria, and I had the opportunity of St. Nicolaus. We really didn't call him St. Nicolaus there, we just called him Nicolaus. And we would celebrate Nicolaus. And Christmas season, in our tradition, was that St. Nicholas came at the beginning of the season, the Christmas season, and then the Christ was born later in the season. And Nicolaus came, his actually Nicolaus Eve is December the 5th, and the children, they would put they called them Nikolausstiefeln, which means boots or shoes. They would put them outside at the door and anticipate that Nicolaus would come and leave them some fruits and nuts and candy, and so that they knew that he recognized that they lived there, and also that they had been good children all year long. But the other thing that was traditional with that was also that there was always just a little bit of a little stick, a twig, to indicate that listen, if you're not good, you know what's going to happen to you. So and it's a tradition that I carried out with my children also. And the tradition in our family was that St. Nicolaus came at the beginning of the year, and he's the one that basically is the one that gave you the gifts. And the gifts were small things, such as I mentioned, fruits, nuts, maybe a little candy, if you were very fortunate, maybe a coloring book or a little toy. And then it brought into season. He's the one that represented that time of year, that this is the time to become generous and to be kind to others and loving and giving. So that was the way that we wanted to usher in the season of when the Christ child was actually born at when Jesus was
Now,
born.
where you said this is the tradition. Where is this tradition from? Where were you at
Well,
that time?
I mentioned I was in Austria as a small child, and my
Okay.
introduction to him was when I was 5 years old, and I only saw him once, and he came to our home, and there was if you get the magazine, you'll be able to really read the story better. Tonight it's more in a spoken word, but there it's a little bit more just said in a little bit better condensed manner. But it wasn't often that we saw Santa Claus or Nikolaus, because they didn't have the setups in the mall that they have now, or it wasn't so traditional to go see them so that we could give the whole list of the toys that we wanted. It was really more a fun thing on one hand, but yet on the other hand, it was a time of recognizing that it was the beginning of that holy season, the season of lights, and that preparation that was meant to be made. And one of the things we had to have within our heart to be able to accept the birth of the Christ. And now, of course, I see it as the birth of the Christ within. At that time, I wasn't in that space yet, but that preparation that needs to be made. And Nikolaus, when he visited, it was really, for me, just such a highlight. And as I mentioned, I only saw him once, only came and visited once. But I was 5 years old, and I heard this bell ringing and this knocking at our door, and I was somewhat startled. I went to the door and I opened, and there was this tall man, and he was dressed in white, a beautiful, beautiful white robe. And he had a mitre hat on, and he had his crozier, his stick, like a shepherd hook type of a stick, in his hand. And and I just glanced at him. I looked at him, and I just was somewhat startled, because I'd never seen anyone like that. And then my father came over to the door, and he invited him in. And I was quite apprehensive, because I'd heard about Nikolaus, but I'd never really seen Nikolaus. Maybe a picture here and there, every once in a while, but very rarely. So he came into the house, into our room. Actually, we lived in probably a little 8x8 room, because that's when we were DPs, displaced persons, and these people had taken us in and given us this one room to live in, which we lived in for 7 years. And so he came into our little dwelling place, and he sat down, and he asked me to come sit on his lap. And of course, I was very, very skeptical about this whole thing. And he had me sit on his knee, and he was asking me all kinds of questions. He asked me, if I've been a good girl throughout the year, and if I've been helping my mother, and am I being kind to other people? Just, it seemed like a lifetime that he was asking me these questions, but it was actually just a couple of minutes, but it seemed like it was going on forever. And then when he was finished, he gave me this big, broad smile, and he handed me an orange. And as quickly as he came into the house, as quickly he left, with this magic. It was magic. And it was, wow. I mean, I knew that this was Nikolaus, and that Nikolaus was true and real, because now I had seen him at 5 years old. I'd seen the real Nikolaus. And I've carried that love for Nikolaus in my heart ever since. But that story, of course, has grown, and the what it represents to me has changed, as I mentioned. It's a deeper meaning. I've taken that all within. That loving, kindness, and giving is all now who it is that I am to be, and how we really, all of us are to be. And that by focusing on that part and being kind to others and assisting the ill, these are all the things that help us to go inward and to become more and more connected, until that divine essence of the Christ that dwells within comes forth and is born within us. And that's really what this season is all about. And every 12 months it comes around. And also, I believe that the 12 months, they represent our chakras. They represent the major and minor chakras. And so we're going through different chakras throughout the year. cleansing ourselves and purifying ourselves so that we come to that point again where we're at that platform. Yes, we're now ready to receive. It's an initiation time for each and every one of us this time of year. So Nicholas is very, very dear to me, but I know that there's so much more to Nicholas or Santa Claus or Saint Nick. So I'm going to turn that over to Carl now,
Okay.
unless Neshi has some questions. I don't hear your voice.
I forgot to take myself off mute.
Okay.
I found it really interesting about the gift and what you received, because I remember my grandparents, that's what we would get. We would get like oranges and, some sort of piece of fruit, maybe a little candy, not much.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a huge gift giving kind of thing. It was more about the Christ child than anything else, right? So I find it very interesting. We're two different cultures, and it was so similar.
Yeah. Exactly. It was really about the Christ child. And as far as the Christ child is actually the one that brought the small gifts that you did get, because you didn't get very large gifts at Christmas.
Yeah.
And the tradition in our home was very different, I think, than it is here, because we put our trees up early. And but there, it was the Christ child that actually brought the tree. And so for us, the parents, they would actually have us go to sleep, because we had no space. There's just a small room, but we had to go to sleep. And we did. It's interesting how we did, how we did just awake. But then actually, the Christ child is the one that brought the tree. So when you woke up in the morning, it wasn't really in the morning, it was more in Christmas Eve, because, there you celebrate Christmas Eve. And you woke up and you saw this beautiful lit tree. And it had, of course, the real candles on it. And because we, as I mentioned, we were displaced persons, we had very, very little money, and we received care packages. And the care packages, they would send loads and loads of beans, and we just couldn't eat, all these beans. So my mother, she, like a big, huge popcorn can, how you get the popcorn now at Christmas time, that was all filled with beans. And so we had to go out, because there's a little forest next to where we lived, and that's where we'd get our tree, and that would be our Christmas tree stand. It would be plopped in.
Oh, it worked. No, it worked.
It worked, yeah. But so there we were, and we saw this beautiful tree, and here it was, the Christ child did come to visit us. And then, as I said, there might have been a few little gifts under the tree, and it was just the most celebratory event. And then after that, because we were Catholic tradition, that we went then also to midnight mass, and so that was really the crescendo of the whole experience was there. And of course, the celebration the Catholic Church would have with Christmas. So it was just a beautiful, beautiful tradition, I believe, that we had. And I think it was a wonderful segue for me to grow into having a deeper understanding of it. Yeah.
I have got a little bit of feedback going on. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to figure out the feedback thing.
Okay.
15 years ago in 2002, I had the privilege of going to the oldest Santa school in the country. It's now located in Midland, Michigan, and it's 3 days long. And I'll tell you, it was the 3 best days of my life. I have never laughed as much, enjoyed myself, or learned as much in that short period of time. And the people there were just phenomenal. Throughout much of my working career, I had the privilege of working with ministers of all denominations. And I thought, boy, I've got the best people in the world to work with. But when I got to Santa school, I found that wasn't quite true. The Santas are a cut above the clergy. The Santas not only have a lot of love, but they've got a lot of joy. And ministers are sometimes a little short on the joy part here. Okay. So anyway, it was a wonderful experience. And one of the things that was most memorable was when they told us the true story of Santa. And that's the story that I'm going to share with you now. It takes place at the end of the 4th century. at that time, it was a part of Greece, but part of Turkey.
It's just reverse, but okay.
It was then a part of Greece and is now a part of Turkey.
Okay.
Yeah. And anyway, the bishop in the major city there died, and the cardinal had to appoint a new bishop. And he was a very devout man. And he fell on his knees and he prayed to God for guidance that he make the right choice. And in prayer, there was a miracle. And the miracle was he heard a voice. And the voice said, "You are to sit in the cathedral church that needs the bishop and ask every male that comes in the door what his name is. And the first one that tells you his name is Nicholas, you are to make bishop." Well, the cardinal was elated. He had heard the voice of God. He knew exactly what to do. And so he did. He sat in the church and he had to sit there 3 days asking every male their name before anyone told him his name was Nicholas. And when he did, it was a 12-year-old boy. Now, what would you do if you were cardinal? You know, he knew that if he made Nicholas bishop, he would be ridiculed by everybody from the Pope on down to the lowest Catholic person. But that's what the voice of God said. The first one that tells you his name is Nicholas. So he did. He made 12-year-old Nicholas bishop. And Nicholas was bishop there for 70 years. Now, it so happens that Nicholas was an orphan. His parents had died 2 years previous in a bad illness, a plague actually, that had gone through their city. And he was their only child, their only heir. And they were the wealthiest family in the city. So he was, by today's standards, a multi-millionaire. And at that time, if a family or a community or an area needed help, the only place they had to turn was the church. So a part of Nicholas's day, virtually every day for 70 years, was a line of people asking for help. And rarely was it asking for help for themselves, but it was asking for help for their extended family or their entire community or their whole region. And Nicholas would always help to the extent that he could. And when his money ran out, he would then solicit contributions and so on from other wealthy people. So he continued that work for all of the 70 years as bishop. His reputation spread throughout Europe. People, if they had a need, they would travel for months to see Nicholas because they knew if they did, he would always help. So when he died, the people clamored to the church. They said he should be sainted because he lived as a saint. And it took quite a while to have that done, but eventually, yes, Nicholas became Saint Nicholas. Now, Saint Nicholas is pronounced different ways in different languages. And in Holland, in the Dutch language, it is pronounced Sinterklaas. And when it came to this country, for some reason, it was changed to Santa Claus. So who Santa Claus really is Santa Claus is one who carries on the spirit of love and giving of Saint Nicholas. And I love that story and the fact that it's true. And I so wish that we were able to share that with our children instead of the North Pole. Okay, but it is as it is. And when children are old enough, I make it a point to ask them, do you want to hear the true story of Santa? And if they say yes, then I tell them. But I don't share that with them. I don't want to break their illusion until they're ready, to know the truth. Mm-hmm. So that's the true story, Neshi.
I just love that story. It is one of my favorite ones, and it doesn't matter how many times I've heard it. It still it makes me happy. It makes me happy to hear it, and I think it feeds that inner child, that part of us that yearns for that kind of magic, that kind of kindness. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So when you were in the Santa school, you were told this story so that you could retell it to other people. That's right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So
like
they must have thought that there was a time that you could actually tell that story, because usually when you're a Santa, you don't usually tell that story because of the
Well, that's if you're dealing with little children, but Santas deal
right.
with a lot more than just young children.
Mhm.
Many of them are in the hospital with children, are in nursing homes, are in retirement centers, are in schools, and so on. So they deal with literally people of all ages.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I have to say, excuse me, I'm sorry, Neshi, but in our home, because we have 11 grandchildren, so having him be Santa, it was really quite an interesting way for them to experience Santa. Because when the children were small, they started wondering, because even 2, 3 years old, they said, "Well, where's Grandpa? Where's Grandpa?" Because on Christmas Eve, when our family would get together, all of a sudden he would disappear. So, but my one little grandson, one day I had a whole big discussion with him, and I really tried to be honest, so that they could gear it more towards this story, and let him know that there had actually been someone by the name of Saint Nicolaus, or Nicolaus, and that he was a very, very good person, and that it was just a matter of recognizing that that's a message for that we can all be Santa Clauses, that we can all have that in our hearts, that sense of giving and loving, and being joyful.
Right. And we can have that all year round. It's just not
yes.
just a couple of days out of a year. That
Right.
we can actually carry that sentiment, that essence of
Mhm.
St. Nicholas all year long. It's just not meant for one time a year, right?
Exactly, and that's exactly true. I mentioned that the seasons of the year, I believe, represent the chakras, and it represents like our initiatory path, but that we are being lifted to different levels of awareness and consciousness. That's just sort of a reminder. That's what I think the whole year is for. All the seasons of the year are for,
Mhm.
the months and the seasons. But yes, but that means that you're only increasing that level
Yes.
of kindness and
And,
care.
and it's a great reminder too, because more people tend to be kinder during the holy season, during the
Mhm.
holy, and it's a nice reminder of it, and to have so many people involved with it, right? We have a couple of comments here.
Okay.
Rob says it beats the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer story. Mile.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And Stephanie says, I love Terry Pratchett's version of Santa, the Hog Father. I don't think I've ever heard that one.
I haven't
Oh, I
either.
haven't
No.
either.
Stephanie, if you can give us a link or something like that, that would be great. So, hi, Dylan. I don't know who Dylan is. Hi, Jonah. I don't know who Jonah is, but we're going to tell him hi. Hello. Yeah. So,
I would
oops, sorry. Go ahead.
I would also like to say that being a Santa is one of the most interesting and educational things, and certainly the most enjoyable. I enjoy being Santa more than anything else I've done in my life.
Wow.
But the what you can learn over the years, I've seen about 25,000 children, and the change in the children is mind-boggling. And luckily, before I started Santa, I had already done some research on the crystal and indigo children.
Mhm.
And so I could identify them, as they sat in my lap, and even as they were standing in line by their behavior and so on. And I did, the thought just hit me that St. Nicholas embodied crystal energy.
Yeah.
And crystal people way back then were extraordinarily rare. They were really rare until the middle part of the 20th century.
Mhm.
So he was an exceptional person.
Mhm.
But anyway, the percentage has gone from 12 to 15% of these special children that we call indigo and crystal, till today it's about 65%.
That's great.
And the evolution or the change in the DNA, and this has been verified by the geneticists, is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
That humanity has evolved that far in that short of a period of time.
That quickly. That kind of
Yes.
tells you, it's kind of like when, a diamond is formed, the pressure it takes to create a diamond, right? And Grandmother Earth does that, that pressure to create that diamond.
Yeah.
It's very similar, I think, that humanity having to evolve in that quickly in that short of time. We went through quite the pressure to bring to get ready for that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Can I talk about one of the things that's happening right now, Neshi?
Absolutely. Yes, please.
I mentioned this to Neshi just before we went on the air. Does everybody understand the Schumann resonance?
I think you should explain.
Okay, in the 1940s, a scientist by the name of Schumann found that there was a field of electromagnetic energy around the Earth, that it was emanating from the North Pole, would go out hundreds of thousands of miles, circle the Earth, and come in through the South Pole. So where the Earth exists within an envelope of this electromagnetic energy, and it's called the Schumann resonance. Well, it's not difficult to build an instrument that can measure that energy, and it's measured since the 1940s, and it was steady at 7.83 hertz. Hertz are vibrations per second, until it was steady until 1987. And for those of you that have been in metaphysics for a while, if you recall, 1987 was a year that was referred to as the harmonic convergence.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And in that year, the frequency of the Schumann resonance moved above 8, and it has continued to increase ever since in a very erratic manner. It will be, if you see it on a graph, and the Russians publish this, it's measured every 10 minutes, and it's very sharp, jagged points. And what they measure is they measure the highest point. Okay. Now, last year in February, they measured the Schumann resonance at 76 hertz, almost 10 times as high. And then in May, for 3 days in a row, they measured it at 36 hertz. Now, late last week, it hit 80 hertz. And following that, for several days, it was hitting between 40 and 50 hertz. And what happens when we get these spikes of high energy? I mean, it really messes with our physical body. It can mess with our emotional body, with our mental body. And Ortrun is in physical therapy, and at the therapist yesterday, she mentioned that her body was just, giving her a lot of difficulty. And he says 60% of his patients have been going through the same thing. Wow. Okay. And just before we went on the air with Neshi, she said she's had a headache today that she couldn't get rid of until just roughly before this afternoon. And Ortrun's body is still, she's just not herself.
Right. Well, of course, I have, I'm still healing from the surgery that I had, of course, but I'm an empath anyhow, and I really do sense energies to begin with.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that's going on right now, and I mentioned this also to Neshi, is that today is actually another 11-11-11 day.
Yes.
So we had the 11-11-11 day at the beginning of the month, and now we have another. And that's not something that happens, that often if you stop and think about it. I don't know how many often it happens, how many years apart that kind of a thing happens. But so it made 11-11-11 was an extremely powerful day.
Yeah.
So I believe that this whole span has been an extremely high frequency time. That's why I think there was so much going on. That's why I think that November moved on so quickly, because it's like we feel like we're not getting that much done, even though time is flying by. It just seems, how come everything's taking so long and we're not completing things, but it's gone. And but that 11/11 at the beginning of the month was basically had to do with the starting to put out that energy vibration of that well, 11 is always associated with the master numbers, mastering the physical body, the mental and emotional body, and of course the 33, if you add it together, the spiritual body. So that energy vibration was already, it comes every year for us to put out that it's time for this to occur. But because of this happening in twice in 1 month,
It's a lot.
the energies were stronger through the whole entire month.
Yeah.
Today is actually a time when what it is that you were putting out to the earth, where it was really time for it to be grounded into the earth. So, but that doesn't mean it's over yet either, because now we're moving into the holy season, so that the energy is even higher and higher. So the wall, I mean the veil has been very, very thin for us through all of November, more so than usual. And then now moving into this, the end of the year with the season going on, it will continue. So don't give up and continue to put out that the desire of what it is that you want for yourself and where it is that you want to be in consciousness, and what you want for the consciousness of the planet, because that time is now. It's really now for us to create that, and now we have more of a chance to do that.
Well, I wanted to about the human wave, the resonance, is that science knew back in the 60s, actually, that when the astronauts were out of the gravitational field of Earth, and if they were up there for longer than just a day, not even, when they came back, they were very altered. And the Russians are the ones who really found that out, because their people were up there for a lot longer period of time. And what they found was that because they were outside of the Schumann wave, the resonance, that it affected their brain. Okay. So the Schumann wave is an earth energy field, and it really does prove that we are her children, because we are so interconnected with her. When we're outside of the Schumann wave, many people experience it as jet lag when they come back, because especially if you're doing those transatlantic flights and you're outside of the Schumann wave for those many hours, that's where the jet lag kind of comes from.
Well, Neshi,
NASA actually created a machine that will replicate the Schumann wave, and that's how the astronauts can stay up at the space stations for months on end.
Okay. When you're flying, the Schumann wave again reaches out several 100,000 miles from the Earth.
Yeah.
So even the astronauts don't get outside of that envelope.
Yeah. I'm wondering if because the way I learned about the Schumann wave, it was like 55 feet off the Earth's surface. That's how I learned about the Schumann wave, through feng shui. And because that's what kind of leads to sick building syndrome too, is because those skyscrapers, those upper floors are outside of the Schumann wave. We're going to have to take a look at that and find out the height. How far out does it resonate?
I've never heard the 55 feet before. That's new information for me.
Yeah.
But if you ever see a diagram, and the Schumann wave, it really cancels out some of the harmful radiation coming off of the sun. Mm-hmm. And it is like an envelope of protection for the energy coming into the Earth from outer space.
Right.
Now, also, I just had a flash here as you were talking. The fluctuations in the Schumann frequency. Mm-hmm. I think there are two root causes that it's increasing. I think the collective consciousness of humanity, the Schumann frequency, And also, based on channel information, the Earth is receiving wave after wave after wave of very high frequency, powerful energy being sent to us to assist us in the ascension process. That also is affecting the frequency.
Mhm.
And the frequency is the root cause, is the frequency of the Earth itself is increasing.
Mhm.
And thus the energy that it's sending out is increasing.
Right.
So we've got these three factors all working together.
Mhm.
And the net result is this growth in frequency. And we're going through on particularly physical discomfort because we're the frequent organs and our body is raising. And it's we don't like it, but it's growth. And growth is so often there's some pain associated with it. So,
Growing pain.
yes, right.
You know, Paul is checking into something for me with you know, the local like sheriff's department and things like that. DNR. Today, it happened twice this morning. I was getting ready for Connie's show this morning, and I heard this, and it actually kind of shook the house a little bit. It was like this big boom, right? And at first, I thought maybe Mom had fallen, but I realized, you know, that she's not that big of a person to create that kind of sound. But I did go check on her, and she said she felt it, felt the house shake. Ran upstairs because Paul was just getting ready for the day, and he says, "What was that?" And I said, "I don't know. I thought maybe something happened in the house, you know." And we didn't know what it was. And then Connie was having some issues with audio problems, and so I came up here to the academy to produce her show. And while we were trying to figure out her sound, what happened was that boom happened again, and it actually took out my internet for like a millisecond. I mean, most people probably didn't even realize it had happened to my internet. That's how quickly it happened. So I'm sitting here thinking as we were talking about the Schumann resonance being higher. I'm wondering, you know, if there wasn't any other cause to it, you know, because we have a lot of frack mines around here that maybe they were dynamiting. I don't know, but we're going to check into it because back in 2012, I heard a recording. I was down in Mexico at a training with Drunvalo, and he was sent a recording from some people in Russia, scientists. And what they recorded was sounds inside of a cave that was emanating from a cave, and it was these. Um, I want to say it was like, you know, when you hear somebody's stomach growling and it's really loud, you know, like that, but like 100 times louder, right? And they didn't know what it was, and they even thought maybe it was the ice and all that, but no, they couldn't figure out what it was. So scientists were measuring it, and what they realized was that it was actually coming from the Earth itself.
Yeah.
Right. And then pretty soon it was going around the Earth. People, different parts of the world were doing these recordings. They didn't know what it was, and they realized that it was the same sound that other people were hearing in different parts of the world. And at that time, they thought it was the Earth resonance herself. You know, because that was up to what I want to say it was 58 at one time hertz. And so that's what the scientists were saying from Russia, was that it was the Earth herself that was making these noises because they thought she was growing. She was growing. And so, you know, and we took that to mean that it was her subtle bodies doing what she needed to get done so that she could prepare herself to move into the next dimension.
Let me share a wild thought with you on that.
Yeah.
If you increase the frequency, the atoms spin faster
Mhm.
and become larger.
Mhm.
And if the Earth is increasing in frequency, that means the atoms are expanding, and yes, the Earth is expanding.
Mhm.
And this is going to create earthquake activity.
Mhm.
And what I was getting intuitively was you were talking about the shaking and the boom, is there was some slight earth movement in
Mhm.
your area.
Yeah.
And when rocks slide against each other, they do create electrical energy
Mhm.
that which has been the cause of some of the airplane crashes because our instruments go bonkers in the plane, and
Yes.
it could cause that momentary breakup of the internet.
Mhm.
That came at the same time. There was certainly an electromagnetic component to that,
Mhm.
and Earth movement will explain all of the symptoms or all of the things you
Right.
experience.
Right. Right. Bobby is saying that the Earth is making seismic noises all over the world this week.
That's
I have a friend who lives up in Alaska, and I'm trying to remember the name of the town. Anyway, she had this was a few years ago, and it sounded just like this boom. She said she ran outside because they live out in the middle of nowhere, right? And she was trying to figure out what happened, and it scared her chickens, and they didn't lay for a couple of days, um, and so that's when she was realized that she was hearing the same sounds that were coming from, that was heard from Russia and in China and Taiwan and all the way across the world. And that was in 2012 to about 2015 is when all these recordings were made. And it stands to reason, right? That if the Schumann wave is as high, what did you say it measured at this week?
80,
80.
up from 7.8 in 19 prior to 80.
Huge, huge. Yeah, that convergence, that the first one, the harmonic convergence was in 1987. And then there was another one in, I think it was 1993.
So I think
Yeah, because there was three of them. And I think the last one was in like 96. I think the last one was in 96. And, but Julie Hedges was just talking about how how the planets line up, and that was part of the convergence. That was the convergence, is that all of the planets were in a straight line to each other, and yeah, and so I wonder what the planets are doing right now.
Yeah, Julie probably knows.
I know she's not in the chat tonight. She's not in the chat
So if
tonight.
anyone has a comment on that, that would be wonderful to
Yeah.
hear.
Stephanie did put the link in there from Wikipedia about the Schumann resonance. So if people want to find out a little bit more about it, you have a link there that you can go and check it out yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Neshi, I have a question for you. I know you mentioned that your condition was somewhat similar to mine, but could you share
Sure.
what you do as far as, I know you don't call it Nicolaus, but what is the tradition, the Native American, from your
Yeah.
perspective?
Well, it's Santa Claus.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was going to say that there's a blending, I think, of the Christianity and more traditional beliefs. Because in the traditional beliefs, they don't talk about Santa Claus, but they talk um, about having a good heart and living in a good way, and all of that has to do with kindness and helping others. And it's kind of like another way of talking about the golden rule, really, right?
Okay.
But my grandparents, the way my mom grew up with Christmas is that they would have a Christmas tree, but it was only set up for one night,
Okay.
which was Christmas Eve, and it was decorated. My grandmother did all the decorating, and what they had were candles for the
Yes.
lights, because this would have been in like the 1920s and 30s. And so because of a fire hazard and the tree drying out, that's why they only had it for one night. Um, and they did get presents, but not very many. You know, it was like one present apiece, and my grandmother actually carried it through to her grandchildren because she had a lot of grandchildren. You're not going to spend and they didn't have money. They really didn't. Um, and so what we would get, and they would even be put like in the lunch bags, the brown paper bags, right? And she'd do like a little drawing on the front of it.
Uh-huh.
And we would get usually an orange or an apple, sometimes tangerines, depending on how expensive they were. And we'd get some of those candy cane, the little ones, those, and sometimes a small box of colors, something like that. But it all fit into this little lunch bag, brown bag kind of thing. And we all got one, and it was fun. We all looked forward to it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But, we didn't spend a whole lot of Christmases with my grandparents, though. I don't remember. I remember only maybe a handful of times. I was second to the youngest, a grandchild. And so by the time it got to my youngest brother and I, having grandchildren was kind of like old hat. No, just a kid. But that is what I remember. Now my mom tells me about when she was a kid that my grandmother had a piano, and they would play Christmas carols and sing Christmas carols on Christmas Eve. Christmas Day was really about family. They would make a nice big meal, and my great grandparents were there, and they would spend like 2 weeks with them. Of course, back then they didn't have a car. It was horse-drawn buggies. And so they would bring their horse and their buggy, and they would stay for a week or two, and then head back. And really, when I heard those stories, it's kind of hard to imagine what that would have been like back in the 30s and the 20s to experience Christmas in that way. Because it's so different now in modern day. It's so different.
It really is. And actually, we brought very little of this from Europe, America. My mother actually brought some of the candlestick holders. And when we were here in the United States, this was in the 50s, became in 52. For quite a few years, we used these candlesticks. So we used the real candles on our tree.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was over in Europe, and it's well, they probably don't do it quite like this today, but as you know, we celebrated Christmas on the 25th. And it was actually, until the Epiphany. But that was when the Eastern churches, when they started their Christmas season. So, and I don't know how in the world they did this, because they had these huge trees, beautiful trees back in Yugoslavia, and with all these candles and so on. And then they would give them to these, to the group of people they knew that were the Eastern Orthodox religion. They would use them to their time. You talk about how dry the needles would become. I don't know how in the world they ever did that. But then, of course, they would have their celebrations.
Yeah.
Those celebrations went on for a long time in their area.
Yeah, Stephanie is saying the echo is getting pretty bad. Bobby is saying, Neshi, there's a weird echo in the feedback. Yeah, I know. And we're not even sitting next to our microphones. I actually moved away from mine a bit, thinking that I was a little too close. I don't know. As we're talking about Grandmother Earth and what she's doing, maybe we're doing some
activity going on.
Yeah. Stephanie's also saying that there are 3 M5s, earthquakes, in the last 24 hours, and 24 active volcanoes going right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot,
Right.
For those who run on millions, I send that information up almost every day in terms of the earthquake activity, and the activity has quieted down.
Yeah.
It was.
I was going to say
we hit a.
That echo is really kind of messing up our timing. I was going to suggest that maybe I refresh my screen. That might help.
Okay.
Okay. And so audience, we're just going to be gone for like, a second or two. I'm going to refresh the screen, and Ortrun, you might have to go out and come back in because I might lose you in the refresh. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So, okay.
All right. Let's hope that helped.
And are we still with you?
Yep. You're still here.
So you didn't lose us.
Oh, good, 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 good. Let's hope that helped in the echo. Sometimes we just have to kind of reset it. So it doesn't sound too bad. Doesn't sound too bad. All right. So we got about 10 minutes left. Orchard, did you want to do a meditation tonight?
It would be nice, I think. I think especially since we are going into the holy season. I know it's still a little bit early, but the thing is that it's and this is our show. We're not going to be doing a show next month because we're going to be, traveling.
Mhm.
So that might be nice to do, but to prepare ourselves, for this beautiful, beautiful season. And I just want to say, we here that are into the spiritual teachings, we think about being, giving in kind and throughout the year. But for so many, it is just a reminder once a year, that hey, carry this out through the year. And so it's a good thing, I think, that it actually does occur. I have to say that as far as it's a shame that it has gone so much in the way of quote, Santa being the big objective, but also a reminder that it's not only about the birth of the Christ, but it's also that festival of lights, which is going on around the whole planet. That there's a recognition being made right now of the ones that they have studied and the other traditions. December's filled with them, whether it's the Buddhic or the Hebrew or, Krishna, no matter which direction you look. And also for us to remember that, us being in the Northern Hemisphere, this is what we're celebrating right now. Where if we were in the Southern Hemisphere, we would be celebrating
Spring.
the winter. Yeah, but yes, I mean, we'd be celebrating spring, but they would be actually celebrating what we're celebrating right now. It's the
Right.
winter solstice at that time of year.
Yeah.
So there's this balance going on all the time. I mean, some places are celebrating actually their beginning of spring, and we're celebrating, I mean, the daylight just now ending or beginning to end, and we're now beginning to and others where it's just starting. So it's interesting that there's that balance always going on throughout the entire planet. Is that it's almost to me again that weighing out of both the divine masculine and the divine feminine energies, going into that darkness and going into the light, and that is our journey. And that's also what you see in the ancient Egyptian cultures, if you study them, is that when you're walking the pyramids or the temples of the West, that's when you're going to the inner, discovering that divine Christ or essence or Buddha or whoever within. And then when you go out to the eastern side, that you're bringing all this new energy and that level of awareness that you've gained back and out into the world, so that you can then enhance your life, but others also, and help, of course, the planet and its upliftment in the meantime. So anyhow, let's just take a moment and close our eyes. And as you close your eyes, breathe in the divine energy of our planet at this time. And begin to sense the love that our divine mother is sharing with us. It is the season of lights. During this season of lights, recognize that you are symbolically the tree, this Christ tree. And as you look upon this beautiful sculpture that you are, the many lights that glow within you, within your physical, your mental, your emotional, and also your spiritual bodies. And sense how this time is a reminder to us to move yet higher up in the recognition and the knowing of who it is that we truly are. The Divine Mother Earth is lending her energy so that we might receive this knowing. The Kundalini energy swirling up through our spinal column, throughout and around our spinal column, connecting us to the heart and mind of divine creation. And this divine creation, the heavens that is within us, swirling downward, intertwining with the energies of the earth. And as it does so, see how the lights within you, the many chakras within you, your major chakras, your minor chakras, and all of the sub chakras throughout your entire being, the ones that were radiating beautiful lights of blue and green and orange and yellows, see them being intertwined with the divine light that comes from the heart and mind, our divine creation, our divine creator. And see within yourself being lit, each chakra at a time, blending the color that it might have with the color of the divine light. And see how it becomes that Christed light, the golden light, still embodying all of the colors of the rainbow, but in balance and in harmony. Each one of your energy centers is transmuted, transformed into the highest essence of all that there is. Each chakra is being polished like that diamond light. Every facet of it, and it twinkles and glows like a diamond. And see this having lit every part of you, every part of your entire physical body, the emotional, mental, auric, astral, soul, and it becomes the body of the divine Christ that dwells within our planet Earth and also in all that there is. And see joining this energy of the divine Christ with the energies of Buddha and Krishna and all the many, many souls that have gained this anointing, that have met their challenges, that have walked the path and that are being uplifted yet into a higher level of awareness and consciousness. It is filling you. It is filling those that are part of this show. It is filling everyone that is upon the planet. For if we embrace the planet and everyone upon it, and we allow them each to grow in their own way, ever connecting, ever being lifted up, and from each and every one that is upon the planet, we see this divine radiance coming forth. And sense the pulsation of this radiance, the radiance that comes through us and joins us, that aspect of us that is of the divine. And with this recognition that we are all one, Divine Grandmother Earth is being uplifted, ever uplifted to higher and higher levels of knowing and understanding, embracing and loving, caring and giving to everyone and everything. And look at how our earth has changed. The earth that dwells within us and the earth that surrounds us, that is part of this planet Earth itself, the grandmother. And the respect and love that is shared between everything and everyone, with every molecule. We are divine creators. And on this beautiful day, see this occurring not only within, but around us and around that planet. See it being ever uplifted and uplifted. Your hands underneath the planet, having gathered with those that are present to assist of the planet. Love, peace, joy, goodness. It all prevails in everyone and everything, and we are all united with the earth, with the Milky Way galaxy, with the planets, with the universe and the universes and all that there is. And so it is, and so it shall be. You are this divine expression, the expression of all that there is.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
That was good. Oh, we got that.
Thank you.
Well, Neshi, to you and to all who are listening tonight and to all who listen to the replay, I want to wish you all the most blessed and happy and prosperous and healthy Christmas and New Year. It's wonderful to share this time with you. Thank you.
It is. It's the most beautiful time of the year, right?
That's right.
Reminder to us and for us to remember that
We want to wish the same to you too.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone that joined with us this evening. And yes, you are all loved, and we embrace you all. Thank you so much.
And Ortrun and Carl will be back with us in January for their January show. And this is what we're going to be sharing about the next time. This is Carl's book, Earth's Ascension, Nibiru and the Spirit Realm. So we'll put in the comments section after the show, if those of you would like to purchase Carl's book so you can read it before the next show and ask him questions, right? We'll have a book discussion. We'll have a book discussion. So thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next January in the new year, 2019, for the Mystery School on the very last Thursday of the month. Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Night.